many things affect your life as much as slow traffic and bad weather. Listen tomorrow morning for Traffic and Weather Together every 10 minutes on the 9s on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back in. It's Cougar Nation. We take your calls, 801-575-8255. And we ask this question, and you can really chime in on whatever you'd like. But is Kansas, who is coming to the Marriott Center tomorrow, the biggest brand BYU has ever hosted inside the Marriott Center? We'd love to get your thoughts on the question. Any experiences you've had with other big brands? Could be the Gonzaga game from years back. There's been some good teams that have come in, but maybe not to the likes of Kansas. What's your thought on that question, Mitch? Is Kansas the biggest brand to ever come to Provo?
I believe so, and I think that Kansas is one of the great basketball brands in college basketball, and I'm stunned that they're experiencing the issues that they've gone through since BYU joined the Big 12. Kansas has just looked human. They've been they've lost a lot of road games. Because I thought when BYU stepped into this conference, there was no chance. I should say no chance, but you're going to step into a similar situation like the WCC, where it's one team that's always at the top, and that's the Kansas Jayhawks. That hasn't been the case. Now, it's gone to a different team, the Houston Cougars, who are now looking like the juggernaut in this Big 12. But Houston just doesn't have the same following, the same decades of success. Since about the 80s, Kansas basketball has been elite. I mean, when Roy Williams took over that program, they have just been an annual NCAA tournament team. They've won national championships. They won in '88 with Larry Brown. They won in 2008. They won in 2022. Kansas basketball, and being there last year too, realizing just the history and how college basketball and basketball itself centers around Lawrence, Kansas. It's a remarkable place. And yes, I think their brand is top notch. I think it's the biggest brand that BYU has ever hosted in the Marriott Center. First time Kansas is coming to Provo since 1960. That was a game in the Smith Fieldhouse, so it's been a minute, man.
And it's a big game, too, because if BYU wins this one, they take sole possession of fifth place in the conference standings. And, of course, it's a quad one win opportunity. If they were able to get that would help the resume tremendously. This Kansas team has not impressed me on the road this year, Mitch. They recently lost on the road at Kansas State. And, of course, they lose late Saturday night at the Huntsman Center. I do kind of wish that Kansas was a little better and playing better basketball coming here, but that shouldn't take away from the opportunity because, as we've learned in college football, and I think it still applies to college basketball, brands and logos, they still matter. Even when you're not just having the greatest year they've ever had, you still look at that, and it could be a ranked win against the Kansas Jayhawks. Never mind that they're not that deep, and they're not going to win a national championship. I don't think they're national championship caliber, but that doesn't matter when it comes to resumes and opportunities, and that's why it's such a big one tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, this BYU-Kansas game, it's been sold out for weeks. Now, every BYU basketball game is pretty much a sellout these days. But this game in particular has been sold out for a while, and it's why brands are such a big deal in college basketball because no matter who's on the court, I don't know if every person that's going to be in attendance tomorrow night knows all the names of Kansas's lineup, but they just know Kansas basketball. I'm showing up to that, and that's a big deal for BYU to host Kansas. So it speaks to kind of the prestige of Kansas. And last year, BYU knocked these guys off, and we'll be joined here coming up at the bottom of the hour by the guard who hit that amazing shot over Hunter Dickinson, Dallin Hall. He'll be joining us coming up a little bit later. We can reminisce about that and look ahead to tomorrow night's matchup. But, Kansas is a big-time brand. Bill Self is a really good head coach, a legendary coach, 22nd year at Kansas. It's his second visit, though, as a head coach to the Marriott Center. Do you know what school he was coaching, Matt, when he was last in the Marriott Center? Do you know which school he was coaching?
I know what school he was at previously, but was it Illinois?
Tulsa, when BYU and Tulsa were in the WAC. So back in 98, Bill Self coached against BYU in the Marriott Center when he was coaching at Tulsa. So second visit for Bill Self, but it's been a long time for Kansas. It should be a fun one tomorrow night. 7 p.m. tip-off. 6 p.m. pregame right here on KSL. And before we get to a break, let's get to some what's trending with BYU hoops.
Cougar Nation trending. What's trending up and what's trending down this season?
You can get us started, Matt. What direction you want to go with this?
Let's go trending down so we can end on a high note. Trending down for me is three-point shooting percentage. Even against West Virginia where they hit 10, they were still mid-30%. This team hasn't had a great three-point shooting game in a while, and yet I feel like that's a positive because they're finding ways to win. They're doing it with different personnel. There's different guys making plays at different times. You just have to win. You have to find ways to win this time of year, and BYU is doing it, and I think that is a muscle that you have to develop as the season goes along, and I like that they're trending in the right direction in terms of just finding ways to win.
It's a good poll, and for me, trending down, it's kind of nitpicky after 2 impressive wins, but still just the scoring droughts. You got to find a way to avoid those in the second half. You get up 22 after Dallin Hall knocks down a 3. BYU then goes about 6 minutes with only 1 field goal attempt, and that allowed Kansas State to get trimmed down the deficit to 8. So avoid the scoring droughts, and that's going to help BYU. It seems like there's always going to be 1 or 2 in a game with this team where they go on a 3+ minute scoring drought. Find a way to avoid those, and I think that'll help BYU's cause in bigger games.
Trending up for me is Trey Stewart. Played 8 minutes, hit a big 3, was good defensively, and I thought the praise from Kevin Young post-game where he said, early in the year, I told Trey, sorry, life's not fair. Even though you're doing all the right things, I'm just having a hard time getting you in there. But he has earned his way onto the floor by his play. And I like that Kevin Young called him a Big 12 athlete. That is something that could become a weapon down the road, that you have a guy who can lock up some guards. Love the way Trey Stewart's playing right now.
For me, it's BYU's defense is trending up to allow Kansas State to only 65 points. They were less than 1.0 points per possession. 28% from three-point range, K-State was. BYU's defense, and I thought the tone-setting play of Keba Keita to open that game was really impressive. So I like the direction that BYU's defense is going as they get ready for this, final 3 weeks of the regular season and a pair of blue blood programs coming up this week with Kansas and Arizona on Saturday. We're taking a break. Cougar Nation sponsored by Central Bank, news, traffic, and weather, and then BYU guard Dallin Hall coming up live next here on Cougar Nation, right here on KSL News Radio.